Íris Santos and McCoy are a couple of London-based 3D artists working in different industries, but both contributing towards something bigger. Originally from Portugal, Íris is a 3D artist with experience in graphic design, games industry, and freelance 3D work for NFT projects. Currently employed in the automotive industry at Wayve, bringing autonomous driving to a new level, she's working in a simulator, creating architectural props, building procedural worlds, and diving into programming. Despite having a passion for art, she also likes to experiment with various art mediums and 3D software. Her recent focus has been on honing her programming and Houdini skills in order to develop tools and streamline the workflow for her team and herself. Born in the UK, McCoy is a lead 3D artist at First Light Games, working on characters, props, and environments. When he was young, his older sister inspired him to become an artist. His goals were then propelled to new highs when he discovered the world of video games, comic books, and the heroes who live there. Along with Íris, Connor also explored the realm of NFTs as an artist. Even so, his most recent work is still connected to it, as the game being developed by First Light Games promises to serve as a link between the Web 2 and Web 3 communities. Listen to this episode to hear 3D artists' authentic experience working with NFTs, be inspired by the exciting visions they are both a part of, and find out more about the 3D art scene. Enjoy! Hello guys, thank you for joining us today and to welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us. Pleasure to be here.
It's amazing.
Can you please introduce yourself?
My name is Íris. I'm a Portuguese citizen, and I came to London to do my degree in games and at Middlesex University. And then, just stayed to work in the industry. Had a few jobs remotely. I finished university. My last year was during COVID, actually, so it was a bit rough at the time. But then afterwards, I managed to join the industry with Connor. He was working in a games company, and he sort of recruited me in. And and then it just went up from there, really.
Are you currently working in games?
I am currently working in autonomous driving company. So they have like this simulator, and I'm doing, it's sort of a game engine, if you will, but I'm working in a simulator as a 3D generalist.
That sounds exciting. We'll find out more later. What about you, Connor?
Yes, my name is Connor. Thanks again for having me on the show. I'm London, Britain, born and raised, been here my whole life. And as Íris mentioned, most recently I took my degree in 3D animation and games. Interesting enough, that's where me and Íris met. I had some experience in the world of games as a freelancer before going to university. And actually my sister, who was a games recruiter at the time, encouraged me to go and do my degree in games just because it'd be like an extra tool to help sift me out from the competition. So going through there, doing a bunch of commissions here and there, doing some amazing projects with some brilliant people in Middlesex, I eventually managed to break out and jump into a games company pretty much straight away, in which we worked on some virtual reality games. And I was fortunate enough to be put into a lead position quite early on because of my background experience. And then from there, hopped around between several different companies until I entered a company that we was making like a cool PC platform type game in which I brought Íris in. And then from there, I've gone off, in a few other studios. And now at the moment, I am a lead 3D artist in the epic First Light Games, in which we're pushing the boundaries of like Web3 integration into video games, and at this moment in time, mobile games. As you said, we'll talk more about that later on, but yes.
Well, it sounds exciting as well. Can we maybe start with your background? If we start with Íris, why did you decide to go to London or to the UK?
So I've always had a passion for potentially living abroad. Never thought about working. I've always wanted to be a vet. So that's where it starts. I wanted to be a vet. And I told my mom at the age of 12 that I wanted to be a vet and go to Australia because I wanted to treat iguanas and snakes. Mm-hmm. And I was absolutely terrified. So that idea then got out of my mind because I'm a bit squeamish. So I cannot do with blood and biology and things like that. But I've always had a passion for games, and more than games, movies like Pixar movies and Disney movies. And one day I was watching one and I just thought, how do they make this? Because this is magical, right? This is amazing. And that thought never crossed my mind. So then I started diving into the possibilities of 3D, and I did some 3D modeling and a little bit of programming in high school on my last year. And I was really keen on it. So then I started researching the opportunities of like following that as a career path in Portugal. And unfortunately, Portugal is a bit outdated in the arts industry, both for education and, industry for working. So then I started looking abroad, and I looked at countries like Canada, but it was a bit too far for my first time going abroad. I also looked at France and Denmark, and then I ended up settling in the UK just because I was lucky enough to come for Brexit. And I went to Middlesex University. I got my unconditional offer. I was very happy. But I've always been keen on arts in general. So my high school was science, but I decided to do arts as a hobby and build my portfolio to then go to university, because you do need to apply with a portfolio. Anything to do with arts, fine arts, 3D modeling. I tried my first time making a donut in Blender, and it ended up being a walnut. I was absolutely successful. I failed successfully, technically. Yeah, and then I went to Middlesex.
Sorry, and you were learning just by yourself in your free time?
Yes. I learned by myself 3D. Yes, fine art. Like I had tutoring outside of school, but I've always been keen on all sorts of arts and stuff. I did cosplay as well back in the day. Really fun stuff.
No, it sounds like a great example that even someone without a background in this area, you can learn it by yourself and see where you got. So well done.
All you need is the will to jump in, and if you're passionate about it and if you want to do something, you can dream it, you can do it.
Yeah, that is true. So can we talk about Connor? How was your journey in the beginning?
My journey has been a bit of a meander. Ever since a young age, I've always been enraptured by the world of arts, purely because I really looked up to my sister, and I always wanted to kind of hang out with her and annoy her in some kind of way. But whenever I would go to interact with her, I would always see her doodling in her sketchbook. So I was like, what is she doing? Why is she always looking at this paper? And then I realized that she was drawing like really well. And then she was like, instead of being annoying and throwing rubber bands and all that type of stuff at me, why don't you sit down next to me and jump in as well? I was like, okay. So then ever since then, I kind of like developed this passion for creating, whether it be traditional art, hand painting, and so on. And since then, I kind of always took it with me. However, I never really imagined it as a career for myself, because I grew up in a household where they were like, they were always pushing me to be the best version of myself. However, the traditional jobs that were being spoken about in my household, like doctor, lawyer, engineer. Yes, my mom is a mental health practitioner. My dad's an electrical engineer. So all of those jobs were kind of being thrown around my household. So I was like, okay, I had a massive passion for that stuff as well. Of course, being grown up and being indoctrinated into it. So I wanted to take those studies as far as I possibly could. So I did biology courses and physics, chemistry, all the way through my secondary school and primary school into college. But arts always was like the thing that was calling me in the background. But I entertained it. I drew all the time, every day, whenever I had a free moment away from my studies. But I never really imagined it being the thing that I do. So I kept going with my sciences and everything. And then I got to the point where I was at a position of being really good at physics. Well, I say really good, I'm sure it's better. But I got a scholarship to Cambridge University to study quantum physics.
Oh,
and I was like, you know what? Let's do it. Let's jump in. So I went there, did like the first month. And then I was like, you know what? This isn't for me. I know this is like a dream position for a lot of people, but this isn't where I want to be in my life. And I know this is such a wonderful opportunity to have put across to me, but it wasn't what called me. And it was always art, because from a young age, of course, doing all the drawing, playing all of the video games that I was, Halo, Mass Effect, Call of Duty, all of these various like open world RPGs. I knew my passion was to be arts. So I dropped out of Cambridge and started doing some short summer courses in various arts and so on to just increase my repertoire, because a lot of my work was very much traditional: sculpting, acrylic painting, watercoloring, batik, ink work, comic book work. But in terms of like digital work, I hadn't really had much of a footprint. So because of my knowledge of anatomy and everything that I've been studying, both from my medical knowledge and through my art studies, I was able to shift into the world of 3D pretty easily in terms of modeling characters, and started showing my sister and showing everybody around. And people were like, oh, you got quite a knack for this. Maybe you should be doing this professionally. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. So I started going on Fiverr, going on Indeed, like a bunch of these small platforms where I would do various commissions. And then my sister, being a games recruiter, was like, you know what, Connor, if you want to take this to the next level, go to university, jump in, learn as much as you can about the industry, and then see where that takes you. And from then, the rest was history. I jumped into uni, and then, as everything I mentioned previously, I'm going into the world of games afterwards. It's been a quite a wild ride.
Yeah. I was going to say that I didn't realize that thanks to your background and your knowledge in anatomy, that's actually very beneficial when it comes to modeling characters and stuff. So you wouldn't guess it, but it's so helpful, yeah.
You always draw inspiration from the things you never expect. It's like whenever people say to read books or to travel the world, you're like, why would I do that? I can learn everything via the computer screen.
And you never know when it might be helpful in the future.
Exactly.
Good to stay cultured at the end of the day. Regardless of what you do, it's good to just push for yourself.
Yeah, I agree. And even like explore new and different areas to broaden your perspective. Yeah. So coming back to university, Íris, can you say how did you enjoy your time at uni? Or how did you find it?
It was very different. I was very out of my comfort zone. I had never been to London in my life, so it was my first time. I basically got dropped by my parents, and 2 weeks later I had university starting. And I can say that it was a great experience throughout. I had good people guiding me. I made good friends, both, Portuguese, which is always good because you get a taste from home, but also from different backgrounds. And you get to meet people with different backgrounds. And that's the thing that I was most amazed about. You get to meet people with different backgrounds, different ways of life, and that helps you grow in a way. But also, university was not just university for me, because I had to work to pay for my bills. And at the end, just before COVID hit, I had like 3 jobs at the same time as I was doing university. And it's not impossible. Yes, you do have to, lose a bit of your social life, but there's other things that you gain. So that's important. But university was, in the first year, it was very new. Everything, all the projects, the teachers, there was a lot to it. And I did some sports. It's the whole university life. So you go, you party, you have fun, but you also have the assignments and your new friends, and you're by yourself. So you don't have your family really like being on top of you for everything, which is kind of weird, but
freedom.
And so freedom, exactly. It's nice.
Would you say it met your expectations, or did you expect something different?
The first year did, because they pushed a lot for us. And then the second year came, and it already felt from the beginning like things were not keeping up as much. I mean, from the course perspective, I've always tried to push myself, and I was fortunate to have a group of colleagues that all did the same. We pushed for each other and, tried to reach above and beyond of what we could do with the skills that we had. And then halfway through our second year, COVID hit. And then, unfortunately, from that point, it was all the way down, because I had to study from home. We had to have classes from home. And it was definitely not the same experience, especially because we couldn't be with our classmates. And that made a big difference in university. It's the human element, but also because everything was very new. This way of, having classes online, submitting assignments in this way, like especially theoretical. assignments. I remember doing my dissertation, and it was very odd to do it online because, well, you could cheat a lot, so that was not bad. But it was really strange, and also the teachers did not organize a lot or prepare a lot for this. Nobody was prepared really, but in the last year, it really didn't meet the expectations. And then I left university with a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, but that didn't stop me from pushing forward and continuing to do what I enjoyed doing, which was 3D, and eventually getting a job in a games company.
Yeah, this is great. I mean, looking back at the situation that happened and no one knew what was going on, it was really hard, but glad to hear that you still pursued your dream and you ended up where you are now.
100%. Thank you.
And what about you, Connor?
So my university experience was interesting, to say the least. I always had the philosophy of being the hardest worker in the room ever since like my school days, just because I'm quite a competitive person. And fortunately, my friends at the time were also very competitive in an academic way. So my friend would be like, oh, I got a B. And I'd be like, what? You got a B? I'm going to get A. So then we would go up, and that kind of ethos carried with me my entire life. So when I went into university, it was very much the same. That being the case, I also have the philosophy of work hard, play hard. I would be the type of guy who's in my class, my lectures would be maybe 2 hours long. And then I would be in the studio until like 9 p.m. working on my various projects, getting everything done until the guys are like, listen, we're closing the building. You need to get out of here. But then on the very next day, very much like Iris, I was working throughout my university life as well, because there's all these maintenance loans and everything. They do help, but they're not going to be the thing that really sustains you throughout. So I worked as a bartender in the evenings. So I would work during the day in my class, get everything done, all of my 3D models. Then in the evening, go and work in this bar called the All Bar One, doing cocktails, all this type of stuff, doing all of the mixology things, throwing the cocktail shakers around. It was really cool. And I met some fantastic people. But apart from the work in that sense, there was also parties and everything with my colleagues. So what I would do is like, we would go out, drink, we would socialize all these type of people. And because it's the type of environment that you're in, that's always what you expect when you go to university. Because I grew up watching a lot of American TV when I was younger. So when they'll be like, yeah, let's go to college. I'm like, yeah, just the dormitory life and everything, parties, like the fraternities and everything. Anyway, there's not like that. So really underwhelmed.
I can only agree with you.
I really wanted to have that experience of like going, like doing all the sports, being in the frat club, doing all the like challenges and everything. But it wasn't that. It wasn't trap. However, that being the case, I did want to make the most of it. What I did. So met some fantastic people. Unfortunately, most of which I don't really communicate with as much nowadays, but at the time, they were like really great people. We would bounce off of each other, both intellectually and socially, go to these different events. And I was fortunate enough that COVID only really hit in the last half of my final year. And because I was in the year above Iris. So I was doing all of my projects, learning all these new skills, like motion capture, using these like giant wetsuits, getting into these green screen rooms and doing all of that type of stuff. And learning all of these amazing new skills that would eventually be the foundation of what I would later have as a job. However, all of this wasn't really provided by the university. So a lot of this I noticed, like when I was speaking to other people in other courses, they'd be like, oh, I mean, every single day we have lectures all the way up from like morning until midday. My class was not like that. So we had lectures for our subjects maybe 2-3 times a week, and they'd be like maybe an hour and a half long. There was one particular facilitator in our university who really empowered us. I say facilitator because he wasn't really a lecturer. He was one of the 3D technicians. The lecturers did a fantastic job, but this particular 3D technician really went above and beyond to empower all of the students. So, but that being the case, only for 2 to 3 hours a day, learning a skill like 3D VFX in the world of games is not enough. So that is why myself and my peers, and I know Iris is the same. We were working in the studio as soon as the lectures were finished, all the way up until they'll kick us out, just so that we could learn and empower ourselves with these skills. Because one of those things that nobody's going to give this stuff to you. You're paying all of this money. £30,000 is not a small fee. So when you see people going to university only for the parties and everything, you can understand it, because of course I had the same mindset. But this is going to be a lump sum of money that you're going to be paying off for a long time. So you really want to get your money's worth. And that's what I did. I feel like I got my money's worth in terms of people, relations that I built, connections that I can utilize in the future, and skills that will empower me, hopefully, for the rest of my life. I don't know now, since this whole AI thing. That's how my investing.
No, I agree with you, because obviously you want to enjoy your time there, but if you consider how much money you pay for it, I guess you want to finish the uni with some knowledge and actually take advantage of that. And I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but did you actually study the same course?
Yeah, we were in the same course.
Oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, when I was in the year above, and we met because we do cross projects between years as well. So that was something that was quite cool actually at the time. And yeah, and we just did some projects together, and then we ended up working together and doing everything together.
My class was particularly loud because we shared a studio there was 2 studio rooms between the 3D animation games and game design, and then VFX had like their own little area as well. But I would be in there all the time with my friends, making lots of noise, getting all of having a good time as well as doing my work. And then I'm sure Iris and the rest of her class were like, "Oh my God, these guys all the time."
It's them again.
Exactly.
Sort of.
But we were all very social creatures, so we would reach out to the second years and the first years. One thing that I like to do as well is I don't want to be the type of person to hoard all the information for myself. If I have it, I believe everybody should be able to share in the same wealth of information. So I would try to work with the second years, the first years, to empower them and facilitate. And I tried that once with Iris, and then she told me to get North. So I was like, okay, cool. And then we that whole kind of dynamic, it kind of built from there, and kind of that whole issue dynamic, which eventually changed and grew into something which I'm very happy. And we ended up being where we are.
Yeah. And I wonder, what were your final projects in the third year?
Mine was not a project that I'm proud of. I'm going to say that.
Was it still because of the COVID, or?
I think so. I think it changed the expectations in the world to do it. But it was a project with Unreal Engine, and we had to do but it was like a cinematic for a game. And it was 2 of us. So it was me and another colleague, and he was mostly he had the idea, he was a visionary. And the person that was doing the visuals, the concept art. So I was doing most of the 3D and the engine work. And in the end, it was good. We learned a lot. And I think in a lot of these projects, what matters really is the final results can be fantastic. But if it's not, you still need to think about the process and how much you've learned from it. And although it's not a project that I'm particularly proud of, the idea was nice. The project was quite fun, it occupied my mind during COVID because I had nothing else to do. Yeah, and I informed upon my skills, which is the best thing.
What's the reason that you're not proud of it?
I'm not proud of it, I guess, because when I look back at it, there's a lot of things that I could have done better. But also, I felt like throughout the entire project, I was doing most of it, and I was not very happy about doing most of it, especially in the 3D side of things. And halfway through the project, I sort of wished I had gone for something with somebody else or do it myself, but it wasn't the case. I mean, in the end, it was a fun project. I enjoyed it. It was like a sci-fi sort of underground city. It sounds cool, but...
it does. And were you happy with the result?
The result is still on my ArtStation, actually.
Oh, so we can have a look.
I'm not proud of it, but in a way, it looks fairly decent to go on my ArtStation, though it needs to be updated.
So the listeners can have a look later.
Yes. Well, if you want. Yeah, I mean, we had the best grade and everything. I guess it was COVID and our lecturers at the time were giving everybody a sort of great discount, a huge great discount, because not all of us had access to the facilities. Because, to be a 3D artist or work in VFX, you sort of need the technology to be empower yourself. You cannot go just with anything. And some people didn't have that. So they had to facilitate at the end a little bit in any way that they could.
Yeah, I think that's understandable considering the conditions. And what about your project, Connor?
So again, my year was quite different compared to Iris' year. So I had quite a different experience in terms of my end of year project. As I said earlier, I always prided myself on being the hardest worker in the room. So I would always do incredibly outlandish projects. Something that my university lecturers would be like, no, that's crazy. Why would you do that? It's going to take way too long. I always ended up completing it and getting good grades from it. So I was very, very happy. Fortunately, there was 3 other people in my class who shared this similar philosophy and to get on to create not only the final project, but the previous project to our university, my final project as well. There was this interesting experience, which was this game pitch idea we had, which was you would create, some kind of promotional idea presentation for a game, and you would go to a game studio and talk about your idea and present it to them.
Sorry, would it be like that for real? You would go to the game studio?
Yeah, you'd go to the game studio and then speak to the devs or speak to the CEO, whoever's available. Fortunately, just to iterate, this wasn't my final major project. This was the project before, but I would work with the same people into my final major project. And all of us put dozens and dozens of hours in. We stayed behind past 9 o'clock. When they closed the university, we hid underneath the tables so we could use the computers. And then they eventually bound us and kicked us out. Energy and put us into our final major project. So the project itself was a short film. We never got to finish it because, as I mentioned previously, we were using motion capture suits for it. And because COVID happened, we didn't get to finish our recordings. So a lot of the stuff we wanted to do, we couldn't do. We made a bunch of the characters and the environments, but the overall project didn't go ahead. And it was supposed to be a world several hundred years ahead of where we are now. Humanity has moved on and unfortunately passed away, and the age of robots and sentient creatures has kind of taken over. But these robots, they're not like how it is depicted in Love, Death, Robots. There was this kind of calamity, almost like meteor strike, which wiped out humanity. And humanity, what's left, tried to preserve their culture, preserve their history in different ways. So they would import these ancient figures in these mechanical states. So some ancient Polish warriors, Spartans reimagined, Greek warrior goddesses and warriors depicted as robots. And then because I'm a tiny bit egotistical, I made myself because, I thought I would work like it. So with my colleagues, we created a bunch of these mechanical robots, and we were going to have a short film in which they stumble upon this ruin of humanity and they find this engine that can sustain them. Because, of course, as they were built by humans and humans are no longer there, they need to have the technology to be able to sustain themselves, because as humanity can't keep them alive, they need to find out for themselves. And it was going to be the journey of these 4 robots going along through the world, trying to sustain themselves in a dying planet while not losing themselves, and eventually becoming more human than the humans that had passed away previously.
That sounds exciting. Is it on your art station or somewhere?
Unfortunately not. Some of the characters were at the time, but as we moved on and I grew as an artist, I look back here and the work is good. However, I felt like some of my newer projects were a bit more interesting visually, so I took that off my portfolio.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand. Just a quick one. If you enjoy our podcast, please give us a review on your favorite podcast app, subscribe or share it with your friends. For more information, visit the show notes. Thank you, and back to the show. So before leaving the topic of university, can you both share some key lessons that you learned from there?
Lectures will only take you so far. University itself will only take you so far.
Mm-hmm.
It is a tool just like anything else. However, a tool is only as good as the person who's wielding it. If you're willing to go the extra mile and push for what you really want to become. Use university as a stepping stone and apply yourself in as many different ways as you can. You find new resources. Put yourself to work. Because as I said earlier, it costs so much money. Get the best out of it, but also put yourself into it, because at the end of the day, you get what you're willing to put in. So if you put in 110%, you'll get back the same.
Yeah, I can agree. What do you think, Íris?
I very much mirror Connor in one saying about lectures will only take you so far. The whole university experience will only take you so far. I mean, you need to look at it from the perspective of people are not there to push you. So you need to be self-motivated in a lot of times. And you need to really push yourself through the good and the bad to get to where you want to be. In the end, hard work, really hard work, especially if you don't have your family around you. It's really hard to motivate yourself to, wake up every morning without your mom telling you to be motivated enough to, after a day of university, still go to work and earn your own, and then go to your other job. And, you really do need to push through and see the light at the other end, because the light is there if you put the work. And, motivation is hard, but bring and try to find motivation in the little things, and happiness as well. Because a lot of the times university, it's really good. You go party, you go do all of these crazy things, but at the end of the day, maybe you go to bed and you feel exhausted. You feel like your social battery is drained. You feel like your emotional battery is drained. So just take a moment to take a deep breath. And if you need to give yourself some time to, gather your energy, go somewhere else, go for a walk. Maybe, I've missed a couple of classes once because I was just not in the right mindset. And, my mom was not there to tell me off. So what was the issue? But I was always very hard on myself. Throughout the whole university year, I worked a lot, both at university, outside of university. And I feel like I've pushed myself too hard. So it's good to push yourself hard to a point, be motivated, hard work and all that. But in times when you need to give yourself some, take a breath, give yourself some time to relax and regain your batteries, just give yourself that time, because that's precious.
Yeah, sounds good. And how did you guys start planning your ways into industry? Did you have a plan, or was it more random?
For me, I was quite fortunate to have industry links pretty early on. As I mentioned previously, my sister being a games recruiter, she couldn't give me a job per se, because of course, straight out of university, I only have X amount of experience. However, what I could do is I could speak to these amazing people, I could acquire connections, and I could look at these portfolios and so on and gain information that would allow me to grow and allow me to get what I need to. So I took all of that information and digested as much as I could, so that when it came time to get out of university, I was already one step ahead. And because of that, I was picked up by a pretty amazing studio straight away out of the university, because I was willing to go the extra mile, because I was willing to put the hard work in. And that went really well. After moving to my next studio, it was when Íris graduated university. And because we were already hanging out quite a lot at that point, and we had a lot of shared interests, and my company was actually looking for an environment artist at the time, I was like, hey, you wanna join me here? And then I'll let Íris take over.
Yes, and then, so I was graduating. At this point, Connor was interviewing with a few companies. He had not yet joined these games companies at the time, so I was putting myself out there, working about my portfolio. This was just after COVID, so there was issues with companies, but also there was the option of remote work. So that was made available in the beginning, not for the best circumstances, but nevertheless, he gave some opportunities to people to join. And I was looking around, send lots of CVs, work on my portfolio, got a billion no's. It's always hard in the beginning. You just need to crack the shell. I had an interview once with Playground Games for their title upcoming Fable. I was so excited because they were the first studio to give me the opportunity to interview with them. I screamed, and Connor heard me from downstairs, and came running and broke a frame on the way because it thought something had happened to me. But I was over the moon. I was really excited. I interviewed and I did the art test. But then I ended up not getting recruited by the company, which, it's sad. But still, I was given the opportunity and I was very honored. And then I interviewed with a couple more companies and had the opportunity to join a studio. But then with Connor's company, at this point, he had already joined and he was there for almost a month. And this opportunity came for me to interview with a company. And then I got the role of the environment artist, which I was, over the moon. I was very happy about. I had just graduated. I was probably one of the lucky ones during COVID, graduating and getting a job almost immediately afterwards. It's an achievement for sure. And then we started working together. Connor as a senior artist and myself as an environment artist. And the journey was a very interesting one as well, because it was an indie games company, had just started, and they were planning on doing this sort of tower defense game, multiplayer. So the whole idea, the whole concept was really exciting. And the people working in the company were amazing individuals as well. We were not a big company. We were about 7. So we had 2 3D artists, 2 game devs, 1 concept artist. We had the CEO.
There was a few more of us. We had 10 of us. There was a few more devs within.
Yeah, some people got let go along the way. And then we got let go along the way, which,
How come? What was the reason?
Financial difficulties.
from the company.
Was it some consequences of the COVID, or it wasn't related to COVID?
Not to go into detail too much, but it wasn't COVID related. It was like funds were allocated to different sections of the company, hence through other ventures, and those ventures didn't go the way that our CEO at the time predicted. And of course, that money was supposed to be the runway for us to go on and continue the project. Being 3D artists, we are very expensive to have in a company. You should have to pay for the equipment, you have to pay for all of the subscriptions to the various software, as well as the salary for 2 people.
Yes.
So that was one of the things to sustain the company. Once they had the minimum amount of assets to continue, they were like, okay, let's cut our most draining things out, just pull in the money so that we can have room to continue. And unfortunately, at the time, that was us.
And we were renting a house at the time, so we got let go, both of us on the same day.
Yeah.
Early notice,
Yes.
garden leave, and we were stressed.
I can imagine, yeah. So did you start looking for a new work as soon as possible? Or what was your reaction?
So that was the time that NFT summer began.
Oh, okay.
Everyone and their mum was jumping into NFTs. Everybody was like, this is finally a platform for digital artists to have a voice and to get their work monetized and their work to feel appreciated. And of course, being a digital artist and being on both the giving and the receiving end, I was like, yes, this is a fantastic opportunity. We'll jump in, we'll finally be able to make something of our digital work, because we run into this thing that a lot of the time people perceive digital work to be easy and straightforward and simple, when in a lot of the cases, it's like so many times harder and takes so much longer and so much less visually gratifying each step. So being able to jump into the world of NFTs, we were very excited. However, was a facade, a complete facade. It was one of those things that the 0.1% of people were managing to make it to the top of the mountain, but on top of the shoulders of everybody else.
Yeah.
So we were very much joked around. We were putting on a lot of work in every day. We would get some money, but then our people who were hiring us were wiggling their way out of the contracts. And we had a few projects which went really, really well. Some projects which were massive in scope, which unfortunately didn't go so well. And some that were just too much of a headache. So we took our losses where we could and decided that NFTs was not the place for us to go. However, it allowed us to sustain ourselves in this period of uncertainty. We wanted the thing that shot us into the stratosphere. And turns out it was a tightrope in which we walked across the edge of a canyon.
That's really interesting. I wouldn't even think of trying NFTs as artists.
There were so many companies at the time going on about NFTs is the big thing. NFTs this, NFT tickets, NFT games places, NFT studios, all this type of stuff. So we, being very capable 3D artists, one environment artist, one character artist, we can do the entire spectrum of things. So we thought, yes, we might as well jump into it. If I could go back and be at that point again, the decision I would make is I would still go into NFTs, in fact, probably much to the shock of Íris. However, it would be for myself. We worked for other people and tried to make other people rich. If I knew what I knew now, then we would have done it for ourselves in a much more capable way, in a much quicker way, in a way that wouldn't breed anywhere near as much toxicity in our lives, and probably we would have gained something much more worthwhile, I suppose.
Yeah. We're part of about 4 to 5 NFT projects in the space of 6 months. Some of them, they went really well. And unfortunately, the projects, some of them didn't get out there because different parts of the project, and you're very dependent on everything. So you've got the initial thought, you've got the marketing, you've got the artists, you've got the devs. And if one part fails, the whole project will go down, which is very, very unfortunate for us, especially because marketing for most projects was very, very unsuccessful. And some other projects were way more of a headache than we predicted.
Yeah, I can imagine. But as Connor said, if you did it by yourself, would you be able to have enough salary to live from it?
I guess NFT projects in the beginning, everyone pitches it to you. It's a great opportunity.
It's a hype dream.
They're trying to sell it.
Opportunity. It's you'll get something out of it if we're successful. Those are the little letters that we fail to read sometimes if we get successful. But you need to believe in it. It's almost like a whole worship behind it, right?
Yeah.
There were all of these people, mainly businessmen, because NFT started as a medium of expression for artists in a different medium, so in the blockchain. It very much jumped from that to business people trying to make as much money from it as possible. And that's where we sort of got caught in the net of rich people trying to get richer and using our skills to do so. And we had to step up a lot and, be very harsh in some moments. But if I was to go back, I would probably still do a couple of projects from the ones that we've done, probably advise people better at the time so they could, or be harsher so they could move forward with better decisions. And I would do my own. Yes, I would. Because at the end of the day, NFTs are still profitable depending on how you look at it and depending on what you do. And at the end of the day, yes, it's a different medium of art. And I think I speak for myself and Connor when I say that we like to try everything in the artistic world. Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely I would go back and do it with a different mentality. We now have different skills as well, but we also have different mindsets to it, and we are tougher than we were at the time.
Yes, definitely.
And just out of curiosity, what's your opinion about NFT now? Do you think it's that, or is there still some potential?
So for me, it's an interesting one because I actually work in an NFT game studio.
Yeah, he does.
Oh, so, okay. Biased opinion then.
Yes. Well, I feel like I could have a realist opinion about it because my studio itself is fantastic. The people are great. We have a vision and we are driven to execute this vision in a way that's going to hopefully bring something fantastic new to a whole breadth of new people. However, that is the studio. That's not NFTs. NFTs itself, I feel like they have the potential to be something great, but at the moment, they are so driven by the hype dream that they cannot be, because everything is based on market this, or you need to have your Discord that, you need to believe in this and you need to believe in that. And that's only going to take people so far. You need to have a product behind, you need to have something that people can really relate to or see or interact with. If you're just trying to sell a dream and a fantasy, it's not going to go anywhere. So in that sense, if you're just trying to make an NFT collection to sell a fantasy, you might as well not do it, in my opinion. NFTs are rubbish if you're trying to do that. However, if you're trying to make a niche for yourself. You're trying to bring a new level of monetization. And not only for the company, but for the people who purchase the NFTs to have the facility and the freedom to be able to trade amongst like-minded people. That is fantastic. Imagine the world of Counter-Strike or League of Legends, where all of these skins, which cost hundreds of thousands of pounds, if you could trade it with other people and actually make money from it. That is, for me, what NFTs should be. And yes, it kind of is, but it's also kind of not. The technology, it's like just over the horizon. We're running the sunset to get there, but it's not there yet. Hopefully, with the people like myself and guys and studios like First Light Games and other people, we can reach that margin. But at the moment, it's just a fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Iris, do you share the opinion, or what do you think?
I share my opinion with Connor. I think one of the things that fascinated me a lot about NFTs, in the beginning, it was the art, and obviously it opens up possibilities. Like ArtStation at the time opened up a whole world, and artists managed to connect and to see what each of them is capable of. But when utilities came along, and there was a lot of things like you purchase this NFT, you get the chance of going on a trip. And it was a lot of like equality in that sense. It was
bureaucracy about it.
Yeah, but it was you purchase this NFT and there is perks with, you can learn 3D, or you would be tutored in something, or you would help in like a mental health cause or a charity. And I feel like that for me, you have the art is beautiful. There's a purpose behind the art. So like Connor said, if you're trying to create a project and there's an idea and there's a purpose behind it, then I think it's as any other idea and any other project. You should always move forward, and you should put not everything you've got, but everything that you can give to the project and push it forward. And in the future, if we were to do an NFT, that's exactly what we would do, because a lot of them, they had the pretty face and, they advertised, the art and the supposed utilities, but then there was no actual substance behind it, because it was a lot of promises. But you need to bring something solid into it and something genuine if you want it to be a good project, not just a successful project, but a good project in its all essence.
Yeah, that's interesting opinions. I didn't really think about it this way, and I have to say that I kind of agree, because I'm not much into NFT. I don't know, definitely not as much as you do, but there is, this kind of reputation, I would say rather negative, but what you just said, it makes sense to me.
You know what I think it is? It's a world of influences that have created a stigma around NFTs. You see things like the Bored Ape Yacht Club, images of these monkeys being traded for millions of pounds, where you see, on the other hand, you see fantastic generative art pieces using code and using various technologies to make something organic and lifelike that can evolve as you interact with it. And those things that are interesting pioneers are pushed to the side in favor of this stupid image, which, because this influencer has spent a ridiculous amount of money on, now this is super famous and this is super cool. But one of the interesting stuff that lays just behind the surface of this influencer shield is lost. And because the influencer shield is so big, social media is taking over. It's where everything is going. It has ruined, in my opinion, the stigma of NFTs.
Yeah.
And the rush to just get anything that you can make as quickly as possible, just for the purpose of making money.
Yes. It's supposed to be a tool to facilitate creatives, not monetize creatives. Yes, again.
Yeah. I was curious, can you both introduce a bit more your current work? Maybe what you do, what's your day like?
Yes, so after the whole NFTs venture, we then again started looking for jobs in the games industry. And at the time, positions were not open a lot. And it was also hard because at the time I was not a graduate, so I couldn't apply for a graduate position, which now there's a fair amount of graduate positions out there. So I couldn't apply for a graduate position, but I was in between, not really a junior, not really a senior. So it was a bit of an odd one. And then I got a position at this studio called Fire Without Smoke, which was not a studio that makes games, but it was a studio that gets games from clients and creates cinematics for the games. And they worked in fantastic games. They produce amazing cinematics. I joined the team and I stayed there for about 3 weeks to a month, and the people were fantastic, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to make the games. I didn't want to get the product and, make a cinematic out of it.
And sorry, can you, for someone who doesn't know, what is cinematic?
So cinematic is technically what we did was we get footage from the game and create whole trailer experience. So we create a whole sort of, a film out of it. And then, it was fun. We played with the characters. We played with things that were yet to come out to the public. Some games are still being worked on nowadays. So it was very exciting on that end. And the team, again, was fantastic. Very quirky people, very supportive, very knowledgeable. But unfortunately, it's not what I wanted to do. And because it's not what I wanted to do, I didn't want to stay and, beat around the bush for too long if it's something that I know it's not out of my interest. So then in the process, I was still looking, and this company called Wayve contacted me for a position of a 3D generalist. But the way they approached me was more of getting or providing me or giving me a position of being more like a programmer, Python programmer, and making tools, which was something that I had never done at the time. And I said, wait, I have never coded to that extent. I don't want to be a programmer. I want to be a 3D artist. Then they said, well, but you can also be a 3D artist. So that's the job of a 3D generalist. He's doing a bit of everything. Okay. And I think that's really interesting, especially coming to nowadays, the world with AI coming along. I feel like being a 3D generalist is yes, it's the future, but you get to experience and be knowledgeable in multiple subjects, not just the one that you specialize on. So then I did the interviews. It was 5 odd interviews plus an art test. It was a lot to get through, but I finally got the job and I was very happy about it. And Wayve is a fantastic company, and they are a technology company, so they're not a game studio. And they're currently working on creating or producing a software for self-driving cars. So they are King's Cross based, and they've got cars going around town driving themselves. And as part of the company, they've got a simulator, which is what I work on, creating visuals. So I do 3D. I've started working with programs that at the time I had never worked with, like Houdini, for example. Most of my team actually has VFX background, so it's really interesting that a lot of people come from a similar industry and put together their knowledge from games and VFX to bring up this simulator for something, completely different from the entertainment industry. And the company has supported me in a lot of learning developments. Now I also code for the company and create tools for the softwares that I use. So I feel like, and I've been in the company for a year now, and I've been very fortunate, first of all, with team that I landed on. They're amazing people, always pushing and supporting me, but also the company itself and the potential that it has to change the future. It's something that everybody should be looking forward to.
Yeah, I was going to say that sounds really exciting. At the same time, working on something with such a vision and like a purpose to make a difference. That sounds really cool.
Yes.
So, and is it like something similar to what is autopilot in Tesla, for example? Just to get an idea. Yeah.
Yes, it is. But what we're doing that is quite different. So we have a fleet of cars that we modify. We use Jaguar I-Paces. So we don't have our cars. Like a lot of companies, they produce the software for their own cars, like Tesla does, for example. What we try to do is to scale the technology. So we would put this software in a car or in a van, and they would perform the same. So we can scale it across multiple cities, maybe multiple countries, who knows?
Yeah, that sounds amazing. What about you, Connor? What's your current job like?
So my current job, as I mentioned previously, is an NFT games company. It is an interesting position to be in because I am very much a realist artist. I like to create realistic characters. The thing that really compels me is sci-fi visuals because it's what inspired me to go into the world of games. The current game position I'm in right now is the opposite of that entirely. It's a battle royale game for the mobile, so it can only have a certain amount of fidelity, and the art style is a bit more stylized in itself. So it's a bit more simple. The forms are a bit more cutesy and so on. So it's not something I had imagined myself working in. However, the opportunity presented itself to me after having the NFT pass that I did. And it's something I didn't want to turn my nose up at. Interestingly enough, at the same time I was being accepted in this company, I was actually interviewing and doing the art test for Hello Games, the people who make No Man's Sky. So that is exactly where I wanted to be. It's sci-fi, it's realistic, it's hundreds of different worlds. I could be the curator and the art designer of my own planet, creating all different types of things. However, this is one thing that for anybody else listening to this podcast will probably run into if they go into the industry at some point. It's probably not so much of a thing now that remote working is a thing, or it could be the commute. I wanted to be able to get to work and get back home within about 40 minutes to an hour. However, this studio was very far away from where I was living at the time. It would take me maybe 2.5 hours to get there. And because of that, it was just unfeasible. Even though the studio was fantastic, they've already created a game that I've already put hundreds of hours in, and I had already completed and passed the art test. So it was already a good point. But this studio, it had an interesting philosophy. It had technology that was trying to push the boundary, which is something I'm always keen on. And it was closer, and the people who I spoke to, they had the charisma and they had the information and the passion to sell me on something, which is something I'm always receptive to. If you can convince me of your dream, then I'll believe it. Whereas the other studio didn't really try to convince me because they saw themselves as being established games company, First Light Games. They were trying to be the new kid on the block and trying to push ahead. And that is something that I really appreciate and something I wanted to join in and be a part of, because the power of indie game studios is you have a freedom to be able to create your vision, whereas AAA studios, you're very much bottlenecked into being a specific thing. That being the case, I joined the company as a 3D generalist, very much like how Íris is. And I've always been a 3D generalist. As I mentioned previously, I always tried to do massive projects where the scope was so huge that I had to cover multiple different facets. And that has very much carried forward into this studio as well. I've been at the studio for about a year now and had been fortunate enough to be promoted to the lead 3D artist of the games company. So we are trying to push forward and make the game as wide-reaching as can be, and a great introduction for people who are in the Web 2 world. For those who don't know, the traditional internet, like what we have right now, YouTube, Google, Yahoo, Instagram, is considered Web 2. Web 3 is everything that includes the blockchain, so NFTs, cryptocurrencies, and so on is considered Web 3. And our game has the promise to be the bridge between the Web 2 and the Web 3 communities. And I find that very interesting. And being in the position of being lead artist on this, I could very much put my footprint in this game and very much be myself, because I've always wanted to be somebody who has fingers in all of the different pies. So being in this type of studio as an indie game dev and a 3D artist working with these amazing people, I'm very much capable of doing that. So I really do enjoy myself doing this, but it's also very stressful as well, because being the lead, there's a lot of responsibility, but also the team is not very big. So I'm pretty much working on a large section of the game. And of course, that has its various stresses. However, with the support and with the passion and the drive that myself and the team have, I know it's something that no matter how difficult it is for now, as we expand it, as we go on in the future and deliver this vision and deliver this ideal to a lot of different people, it's going to be an experience that's going to be worthwhile. Our target audience is people who are playing on mobile devices. Eventually, it'll probably expand to the more PC and console-based people. But right now, we want to be able to deliver this game to as wide a platform of people as possible. And what's the easiest way to do that? On the thing that you carry around with you every single day. That's where we'll market it to that type of people.
And is there a specific date for release of that game?
So at the moment, we are in a transition period from how the game was to this new vision of the game. I'm not going to say too much because we actually have a fantastic community person who's all over this. So shameless plug, join the First Light Games Discord and see all of this information because the game it's coming along and it's going to be fantastic. And we have lots of great community events that link our player base with the devs. We want to have this position where the game is for the community as well as made by the community. So we work on the suggestions of what other people say, what our community says, and we want to feel like in the world of Web3 and you being entitled to own your own assets, you also have your own voice. So with the power of Web3 and having the great community people that we do, we're able to listen to our community and really make impactful changes into our game that can make it the best for what our players and eventually the world will be.
Yeah, that sounds like a really cool company with great vision as well, I have to say. But I must say, to respect your time, we've been talking quite a lot and time is coming to an end. So I guess I'll just say a big thank you. It was great to meet you both. I would be happy to catch up anytime in the future again because I feel like there is still a lot of stuff to discuss. And in the last few minutes, if there is something you would like to share or even promote yourself.
Well, of course, before we do any type of promotion, I just want to thank you for having us on the show and giving us the opportunity to be able to.
It's my pleasure.
Yes, it's a great opportunity and it's been fantastic to be here and sharing our experience because it will definitely help other people upon the decisions they make, both in the industry and outside of the industry.
But in terms of things that we want to promote, myself and Íris actually are endeavoring loads of different ventures. And our most recent one is we're actually jumping into the world of game streaming. So we have opened up a platform on Twitch and our account is called Trident Raijin, in which we are playing loads of different cool games. At the moment, we're going through a game called Elden Ring, which is like a From Software Dark Souls style game. But we try to incorporate loads of different challenges, loads of different in-real world things, and loads of different games that can bring a smile to people's faces. We want to bring both aspects of what it means to be in the world of games, for development and also for play.
This is, we make games and we decided that the best way to find an excuse to play them is to actually do a Twitch stream and delve into challenges and put ourselves out there, because it also, it puts ourselves out there as not only artists, but, people that love playing games, and we are very quietly and we love to, experiment. Like I was saying, we love to experiment with all sorts of things, be it making games, playing games, going off and doing, I know we've recently done tufting in London, which was quite fun, jewelry making. We just love to go for all sorts of things.
Yeah, sounds amazing. I will get the links and we'll add it to the show notes.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. So both Connor and Íris, thank you so much for your time. I will stay in touch and wish you good luck in career and with your Twitch as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure to meet you. See you.
Thank you. See you soon.
Thank you for listening to Produced By. Subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast app, leave a review or send us your feedback. For more information about the host, links from the episode, and ways to connect with us, visit the show notes. If you know someone who would be an ideal guest for our podcast, please get in touch. Thank you and see you soon.